Joy is highly connected to love, to loving and being loved. Eros love in particular, and Eros is the root of eroticism, is not about sex per se, that the true meaning of that word is a sexuality that is life-giving. It's yearning for another soul, right? It's not the hedonism of sex. It's the soul of the other person.
Hi, this is Monica Packer, and you're listening to About Progress, where we are about progress made practical. Please excuse my voice. I'm just recovering from the flu, which I know is going around. While I was naturally an optimist as a kid, I definitely lost this part of me as I grew up. I am much more of a realist now. I tend to see things as they are. I expect that life will be challenging, and with that, so will work and marriage and parenting. To put it simply, I expect that nothing will come easily. And while I don't necessarily think that's a terrible outlook, the truth is that there's still this part of me that really wants to feel that joy is more possible, even amidst all the hard. I think a lot of us similarly disqualify ourselves from experiencing joy because we equate joy with ease or happiness. But what if joy is actually something deeper, something more courageous and embodied and available, even in the middle of strain, difficulty, and growth? In today's conversation, I am joined with Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, one of our most loved guests here on About Progress. And we are talking about joy, what it really is, why it often feels so far away, and how marriage can actually be one of the most powerful places to develop joy. We explore the idea of creating an Eros kind of love through intimacy and marriage. Jennifer will define Eros in the interview, but it's not just about sex. It's more about the life-giving desire that we can all embody to grow, to love with courage, and to reach beyond self-protection. We talk about why acceptance isn't the same as settling, how choice becomes the birthplace of agency, and why intimacy, emotional and sexual, is less about technique and more about presence, delight, and self-respect. This conversation is honest. It's challenging, and it's deeply hopeful. And it may go without saying, but I'm still going to put it here. This discussion will still center around themes on sex, so keep your earbuds in if you don't want your kids listening in. If you have ever felt torn between accepting your marriage as is and wanting something more joyful, if you've ever felt afraid that choosing yourself might cost you connection, or if joy feels like a word that belongs to someone else's life and someone else's marriage, I think this episode will meet you right where you are. Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife is an LDS relationship and sexuality coach with a PhD in counseling psychology. Her teaching and coaching focus on helping LDS individuals and couples create greater connection and passion in their emotional and sexual relationships. Dr. Finlayson-Fife has created 5 empowering and highly reviewed online courses designed to give LDS individuals and couples the tools requisite to creating healthier lives and stronger intimate relationships. She's also the creator and host of Room for Two, a popular sex and intimacy coaching podcast. While Jennifer specializes in a community that is centered in the LDS faith, I know what you hear today will apply to anyone who grew up with religious ideology behind them, especially Christian. That episode is coming up after a quick break for our sponsors. Enrollment is currently open for just a short period of time for my private one-on-one progress coaching. What is progress coaching? It's one-on-one coaching designed to help you transform in your identity, habits, and fulfillment in ways that are both deep and practical. Past clients of mine have seen major progress in rediscovering who they are outside of their roles, participating less in people pleasing, breaking cycles of all or nothing perfectionism, learning to better control numbing out behaviors, managing their stress, clarifying their values, creating and holding to loving boundaries for themselves, and so much more. Spots are extremely limited, and I plan to only open up coaching once this year. My spots always sell out as well. If you are curious about progress coaching with me, you can sign up for a curiosity call where we both arrive curious to see if I'm the right coach for you and your needs. You need to sign up for that curiosity call soon via the link in the show notes, as my coaching enrollment will end at the end of January. So again, go to the show notes to book a curiosity call with me to potentially join as one of my few one-on-one coaching clients this winter.
Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, welcome back to About Progress.
Thanks for having me.
Our most popular guest by far. And I am so grateful for your willingness to always come back here and to show up for this community. And in large part, I know that's because you care so much about the type of women who listen. And we just, have to bring that back to you because of all that you have changed for each of us individually. But today we get to talk about something you and I haven't really discussed on the show before. And we've talked about a lot of things. And this is also the premise and even the thesis, I would say, of your book, That We Might Have Joy. So we're going to start there because I think this is a concept that when people hear the word joy, they automatically eliminate themselves from the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
They think that's just unrealistic. It's too out there. It's better to just accept life as is, and as part of that, marriage as is. And we are going to make that connection today. So let's start with your definition of joy. So we can even set the groundwork of why it matters, which is also what we'll be discussing today.
Yeah. Well, I'll try hard to describe it, but I think it's a little bit challenging.
Yes.
To describe joy, but maybe let me start with what it isn't. I don't think it's, happiness or freedom from suffering. I mean, happiness is a wonderful thing, but it's not just like having no difficulty in our lives.
Yeah.
I think it's these moments that are very often embodied moments, like moments that we experience through the body, of a kind of surrender into the beauty and goodness that we encounter in life. It's like something we can experience at a soul level of appreciation, gratitude, acknowledgement of the good, even in the face of difficulty or challenge. And I think there's a certain amount of surrender to it. Like, I think it takes some courage to know joy, to experience it, because I think our egos, the part of us that wants control, predictability, in some ways has a hard time letting go and allowing ourselves the vulnerability of joy. But I do think it's that we might have joy is the book title, and it comes from an LDS scripture that is God's purpose for us, is to have joy. And yet I think sometimes as religious people, we tend to think more like life is about long suffering. Life is about obeying the rules. Life is about not getting things wrong. To your podcast, about perfectionism, that then, if we overcome all our flaws, maybe then we'll deserve joy. But I think it's much more about developing the capacity to acknowledge and recognize beauty and goodness and love and connection, and to surrender to it, to allow it to touch us, even though they may be moments that are fleeting and we can't hold on to it. That loss may be connected to it even.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it transcends what is happening in our lives too.
Yeah.
Which I think is another factor that requires that courage piece that you shared and the capacity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Almost a grounded too, like it transcends and it grounds us at the same time, just based off of the way you've described it.
Yeah.
So with that, I kind of want to lean into why it's not fun
Hmm.
necessarily.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't equate fun, but it's still worthy of pursuing.
I mean, I think it comes down a little bit to what kind of world we believe in and what kind of God we believe in, because one of the arguments that I make in the book is that to surrender to the beauty and goodness in life, right? Even amidst the loss and the long suffer and the suffering and so on, is to believe in a God that is good,
Hmm.
to believe in our own worthiness, to accept in some sense the fragility of life, but still be able to not become cynical, to still be able to see the miraculous moment that exist every single day. And so it's a kind of a willingness to see. Like, again, I think that the ego wants to be self justified. The lesser part of us wants control. It doesn't, it's very easy to, I guess what I would say, it's very easy, for example, to be annoyed that your flight is late and that you had to sit on the tarmac for 10 extra minutes. And believe me, I've thought all those things, but but rather than how miraculous and stunning it is that we can fly, that we can get on a plane at all, right? To be annoyed that we have piles of laundry to do rather than be amazed and grateful that we don't have to go down to the creek and wash the clothing there. Do you know? And so
Yeah.
it's an orientation to living. And I think it's our human nature, natural man, to use that language, is to be kind of entitled, to be kind of either entitled or to think I deserve nothing, you know, like, I'm not really worthy of goodness, so I won't take it in because somehow, distancing myself from it is safer or somehow humble. But I think both of those are ego reactions, actually, and separate us from the beauty that our souls need to cope in a world of pain and difficulty.
Mm-hmm. It also seems so connected to the work that you do on identity.
Mm,
Because when I hear you describe about what joy is and what kind of person is able to experience it, I
mm,
think of a developed person, a mature
mm-hmm,
person.
mm-hmm,
And as with all good things, that requires some effort. So it seems like you're not born with the ability to hold duality. And that seems part of this joy
mm-hmm.
construct that you're building for us. So, how can someone work to make joy not just a goal, but a right in their life? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
can they actually do towards developing that as part of developing
Yeah.
themselves?
Well, I think it is about development. And I also think it's about disposition. So in some ways, when you look at young children, most kids have just a penchant for joy. Like they delight in the world so much. They see a puppy and their face is just, they just, because it's new. And if they're in a loving home, they aren't usually fearful and kind of ready for life to harm them. And so they have a kind of trust, an instinctive trust in life and a kind of delight in pursuing what they don't yet know about the world and being able to kind of experience it, in a fresh way. And so in some ways they teach us well about joy. Like a lot of times we take great joy in seeing our children's delight in the world, our young children's delight. So I think that's true. And then, but what I think happens for many of us is that we start to confront disappointment, struggle, disillusionment, even with ourselves, with our capacity, with other people. We come up against the harder things in life. Parents try to protect their kids from some of that, but eventually we have to face a world that can be dark and challenging. And I think our inclination then, or I guess what might be natural, is to kind of retreat into either a kind of cynicism or a kind of self-protection, like don't love with my whole heart because then I might be brokenhearted or disappointed. And so I think that what the character or the courage is, and I think it's more connected to courage really, is that I'm willing to not go become cynical, but to still seek and focus on the beauty and the good, even when there is difficulty, even when there is pain, even when there's almost a safety in cynicism or giving up or not having faith in myself or in goodness or God. You know, there's something that's pulling us forward in life, and this is what I talk about as Eros energy. It's asking us to expand, to reach beyond ourselves, to trust, to tolerate the process of reaching for something better. But we have this competing pull that is to retreat, to self-justify, to demand that the world yields to us. And it's certainly an understandable feeling. And some have more adversity to accommodate than others. But I think it can make us suffer more ultimately, even if it's an understandable response.
So I asked how, right? How do we pursue it? And I think if we were to put it in one word based off of what you teach, it's marriage is a great way. One of the best ways.
Yeah. One
Our-
powerful way. Yes.
Yes. One of the, and that's your specialty.
Yes.
So I'd like to connect what you brought up, that Eros kind of love, what that has to do with joy.
Yeah.
And how in working on our marriages and being in this endless pursuit of openness, acceptance, as part of that, challenging our sense of selves. I guess we could just keep going. Oh my God. The list is endless of how marriage demands of us to hold duality, to pursue something better.
Yes.
And with the goal of being joy together. And as part of that, this Eros kind of love. So can you connect those two things for us, joy and Eros?
First of all, I would say joy is highly connected to love, to loving and being loved. So I'll start with that. Joy in a child's success, right? Joy in loving and delighting in a dog. You know what I mean? Right? There's just loving is connected to joy. Seeing beauty is connected to joy. Climbing a mountain and looking and just the wonder of it all, the way that it touches our souls, right? And so love is a powerful way. And I think Eros love, and I'll define that in a minute, is especially powerful. Eros is, according to Greek philosophy and lots of philosophers like Plato and then psychologists like Carl Jung and so on, have really, or C.S. Lewis, they've all grappled with this question of how to define or understand what Eros is. So Eros is this desire to transcend ourselves, to reach beyond ourselves, to reach for what is unknown to us, to reach for another soul, to reach for divinity. Like Plato talked about it as like, not even in a sexual way, but like reaching for the highest part of ourselves towards the divine. And it is indeed that. You know, the joy you feel like when you've done something outside of your comfort zone. And at the other side of it, you know, maybe you had fear. I did paragliding this summer and I was, just walking down to your death. It felt
terrifying.
like, I know, exactly. Yeah. But then when you actually do it, it's so joyful. Like, and when we landed on the other side, the amount of joy in the group that had done it, like, and just, the delight in having kind of experienced something that required transcending your fear to do it. And so, that's just one moment, but so much of life is that. Like, I did this hard thing. I grew, I achieved something. I did something. I accomplished something I feel good about. And I have a deeper sense of joy in having done it. And so this is really connected to the self expansion, the kind of transcendence of our egos, the growing beyond the self we once knew. And both it expands us and we become more ourselves in the process of doing it, right? Because we're living true to our courage. So it's highly connected to courage. And so Eros love in particular, and Eros is the root of eroticism, right, is not about sex per se. Like, even though a lot of people will talk about erotic and we think of commercialized and pornified versions of sex, that the true meaning of that word is a sexuality that is life-giving, right? That is, it's yearning for another soul, right? It's not the hedonism of sex. It's the soul of the other person. And so if you think about when you first fell in love, if you fell in love and, you had that sense of attraction, right? Many people will feel like drawn to this other soul. They don't even really even know what it is about them that's just so intoxicating and compelling. And they're quite different than you, but you feel so understood by them. And you feel this sense I can be myself with them. And they take pleasure in who I am, even though, I'm the extrovert and they're the introvert, or, they're super organized. I'm more spontaneous, whatever it is. But you have that sense of joy when you fell in love because there's a sense of communing with another soul. And you feel at once both yourself, but also like a sense of hope and possibility and communion with another person at the same time. And so when we fall in love, we walk around usually like just like full of joy, and everybody can see it. Um, and we all wish that would just stay in place. Of course, it's a setup because when introverts and extroverts start to create a life together, well, then they start to be like, why don't you want to go out more? Like, why don't you want to have people over? Or the spontaneous person and the very planned person are driving each other crazy because they have very different ideas about how the house should be. And so you start realizing, like, this person is not going to make me happy. In fact, they're ruining my happiness.
They're stealing my joy.
They're stealing my joy, right? And I've been tricked. I've tricked myself somehow into something. And yet nothing's going wrong. And so when we're up against those invalidating differences, we tend to retreat into self-justification, defensiveness, fighting to get our way to win.
The ego side.
Yeah, the ego then, rather than the Eros draw to this other soul that challenges you and delights you, right? And so I think in erotic love, you have someone who both challenges you and to be in connection with also gives you pleasure, like a sense of wholeness that's greater than yourself. And if you have a lot of resentment because you resent all those differences so much, then it will kill Eros, right? And you may say, I don't feel that attraction anymore. I don't feel that feeling about this person anymore, often because it's the Eros love that started has been crushed under the weight of resentment and anger and attempts at control. But if we cannot yield to our self-justification, if we can allow the marriage to challenge us, to help us grow, to learn how to love a person who does the world differently, to accept somebody who doesn't give us everything we desire, right? Which many of us think, wait, isn't that the point of marriage? You marry someone who gives you everything you want. And, and instead, like, how do I be true to myself, but also love this person who's never going to give me happiness?
Yeah.
Who's never going to just gratify every desire I have. And so it asks us to move into a deeper capacity to really love a person who's maddeningly different than us, but that also wakes us up to the world. And I think when you learn to really love another soul, you become capable of this love with knowledge, right? You know them and you can really accept them. And I think that it's very connected to a sense of joy. That, like there's always going to be friction in an honest marriage, but also bliss. Friction in that, like, that we are different, but it also opens us up, allows us to take deeper pleasure in one another, in the differences, and in the ways that we are a couple. And so I think that, the happiest people on the planet, that just the research shows, are happily married. And so it's not an easy thing to create. And one of the big problems with it is it takes two people. And so if you only have one person who's willing to look at themselves and to deal with their lesser selves, it can be a real source of heartbreak in marriage. So, I sometimes hesitate to talk about it in such ideal terms because there's many good people who aren't able to create it because they can't single-handedly create that kind of relationship. And yet it's also possible if we will surrender to marriage in a way. And you have two people who are willing to do that, to look honestly at themselves, to grow. I'll just give an example of it. But like when I first, when my dad was very introverted, and so when I would talk to my sisters about who I was going to marry someday, I was like an extrovert that just will tell me what he likes about me, and he'll just and we can just talk so easily. Okay, well, I met people like that, and they just weren't. I liked them. I liked having conversations about things, but they didn't sort of grab me at a soul level. And then I met my now husband, and I remember like just on a visceral level, he really drew me towards him. And like if somebody had come to me and said, "You're going to marry this person," I would have been like, "I believe that." Okay, like because there was just and he was very quiet, very introverted. Yeah. Okay, like not even like he made my dad look like an extrovert. Okay. Okay. Well, so there was, when I fell in love with him at first, it felt very expanding and hopeful and all those good things. But, a year into marriage, I'm like, why don't you tell me what you love about me? Why don't you say what you like about me? And, I'm trying to pressure him to be what is going to reinforce me. And, it took me a few years, but I started realizing like I need to be less demanding and insecure. Like I can tell he loves me through his behavior. He never was that person. So why am I asking him to be someone he isn't? Right. And so to accept him more was to love him. Now, if he truly didn't love me, there would be a problem to deal with. But the thing is, that wasn't it. I just wanted reassurance too much, really. And I needed to grow into a person that could just hold on to the truth of who he was in my life. It was also true that John knew that about me, and he cared about that fact. And so even though that wasn't his family's style, it was not his style, he on his own would make efforts to do that. Right. And so that to me is like, that's how you choose across the differences. You free each other up to care about the one that's different than you, but it comes out of choice, not coercion. It comes out of courage, not self-justification. And so when you can see that, those are moments of joy when you know the person did that thing just because they care about you, not because they should, not because it's the right way to be in a relationship, not because of any of those things, but like to see someone be uncomfortable for your benefit is truly, is to know joy. It is.
If you owned a business, would you sign up for continuing education to support it? What if you were or are a teacher, a beauty technician, a doctor, a photographer, a dental hygienist, or anything else? The answer is, of course, you would sign up for continuing ed, because that is what all good professionals do. So if you would answer yes when it comes to investing in a job, then why are you any different? That's where the More for Moms course comes in. This is my More for Moms conference turned into a self-paced course made up of 25 world-class speakers who will educate you on how to be you again in ways that are deep and practical, from making sense on why you lost yourself to good intentions in the first place, to helping you explore what it would look like if you were on your own list, to tactile ways to improve your everyday, from dinner to style to hobbies to fun. The More for Moms course has it all, and now at a discount. I have slashed the price by $20, and you also get an additional $20 off as a listener of this podcast with the code LISTENER at checkout. When you sign up, everything from the More for Moms conference becomes a self-paced course. You get access to all conference material, from video to transcripts to audio, so you can catch up or revisit all speaker sessions for years to come. And my favorite part is a More for Moms conference audio. It's a private ad-free podcast feed with all 25 speaker sessions, so you can listen on the go, which is my preferred medium. Again, we just slashed the price by $20, and you can sign up for an additional $20 off with the code at aboutprogress.com/moreformoms. It's time you invest in continuing education for you, because you are a person too. Again, sign up at aboutprogress.com/moreformoms using the $20 off code LISTENER at checkout. As you've been speaking, I've been thinking about this couple friend we had for a long time, and they seemed like the perfect match, And in many ways they were, but they told us once how they had this saying between the two of them, and the saying was, "You knew who I was."
Mm.
So they would say
Mm-hmm.
that to the other whenever one had this moment of like, "Why are you this way?"
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Moment.
what's
Yeah.
wrong with you? And it was kind of a reminder of like, there was a point where this is what drew us together.
Yeah.
And you did know this about me.
Right.
And it was appealing to you.
Yes.
And now it's conflicting.
That's right.
So you just brought up, I think, the main way to get through that, which is choosing.
That's right. It's absolutely.
So I'd like to lean into that some more.
Sure.
Because as you said, two people have to choose.
Yes. That's right.
I feel like we could talk a whole hour on what someone should do if the other person isn't choosing, but let's table that for a moment.
Yes.
And let's start with two people who are not feeling joyful in their marriage.
Yes.
And they're at this crossroads of
Yes.
this paradox of accepting
Yeah.
each other while also wanting things to be better in their marriage. How does choice interplay with making both of those things possible?
Well, so there this is paradoxical, what I'm about to say, and that is to say that I can't and I never will control the other person. I'm never going to get them to love me or get
That's
them
what you have to choose.
Right. So I need to accept that fact out of the gate. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't evolve or change or in response to something I may do, choose differently, but that's still on them. At the point that you give up trying to change the other person becomes the birthplace of choice.
Okay.
When there's a certain amount of surrender into what is in life. Now it's like, who am I going to be in this? That's where we move. In the book, I talk about 3 stages of development. The first stage is about learning more impulse control, being able to handle our impulses. The second stage, it's a lot more about wanting validation from others. And we need this in the beginning, right? We need to know from others something about who we are. But where we really grow into the capacity to love another person and to be capable of intimacy and to be able to forge a soul more capable of joy in a fallen world hinges on choice. It hinges on self-authoring. And it is on this question of, who am I going to be in this situation? In this moment that I'm not getting the validation I want, I'm not getting from my spouse the thing I want. I can't control that. I can control who I'm going to be in this interaction. And I need to be somebody that I can respect. And what does that ask of me? What does the marriage ask of me? Who do I need to be to live up to my own expectations of the kind of marriage partner or person I would be? Not to betray myself, but to live up to what I expect of myself. And because we so easily fixate on the things the other's not doing, we have a hard time keeping our focus on that and executing on that. But that is where just going back to the story I told, where it was like, listen, this is the person I married. And it was pushing myself up against who I was being. That I was sort of, in the name of love, justifying, pressuring him to do what would kind of alleviate something in me, but in a way not know him, not see him, not recognize the many good things he does, and instead try to get him to fit into some sense of control that I wanted to reinforce my ego, rather than seeing him as he is. And so I think for me, I was pushing myself because I wanted to be a better partner, a better friend, a more mature woman. I wanted to not be so needy. And so it was like, I choose to love this person better, to be strong enough to accept him as he is. Now, I'm not accepting, it's not like I'm taking crumbs. I knew that he loved me. It's just that he operated in the world in a different way than I do. Thank goodness. I would be so bored with somebody like me. I would really find them quite, certainly I wouldn't be attracted to them, meaning because of the difference issue. So I think that, it's like stop asking him to be someone he's not and love him. And so when it's based in choice, like it actually gives you a deeper sense of self-respect and deeper happiness in the relationship because you stop trying to control something you can't. And you start embracing the good that's already in front of you.
Do you think in living that out, that's what then creates this feeling of safety, I think, within the marriage partnership so that the other person can choose too?
Yeah, definitely. And, I think that the safety is in the commitment, that, my goal was not to make my husband feel safe or anything like that. But the safety is, if there is safety in marriage, which, it comes from the recognition that you have two people who are bringing their whole selves, that really are invested imperfectly and sometimes being indulgent and bringing our lesser selves, but are not ambivalent about whether or not this is where they're invested, right? And, couples that are happy doesn't mean that they don't struggle or they don't fight even, or they don't have conflict. I think any honest couple is going to have differences, which is different than contempt. It's different than hostility. But couples that are happy, and this is John Gottman has demonstrated this in his research over and over again, it's not that they're devoid of conflict, but there is this sense that we're here for it. We're not going anywhere. There's not contempt here.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry whether or not we're still a couple at the end of this, right? That's the container that actually allows something new to grow in the marriage, new level of capacity. And it doesn't mean that you don't still find some of those differences difficult, even at your 50th anniversary. I think you do. But you also have become more refined and you are really a couple in that process.
You're more at one, like you're more of that.
You're true partners.
Oh, yeah.
You truly have a friend that's joined you on this journey. And there's a lot of beauty in that, of having forged a marriage.
I think the challenge is to not equate acceptance with apathy. And with people, since we have been set up in such a certainty-bound, all or nothing, black and white world, I think a lot of people will hear the challenge to accept the partner as also that means you don't push them or bring up things that are hard or challenge them.
That's not what I would say. Yeah.
Well, and I would say that's what you teach, though, about with Eros love. It is in the challenging. It's both the acceptance and in the challenging that we develop ourselves individually, but we also develop as a marriage unit too. Like we go through those same 3 stages.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. So like the who am I going to be is a big question. What I mean is it's not apathy. So it's like I have to just accept as a given. Like there's an AA adage that I botch every time, but it's something about recognizing what you can't change and what you can, and being clear about it and having the courage to deal with what you can. Okay, that isn't, well, it's not that easy of an adage to say because I can never say it, but it's hard to live it. It's very hard to live it because, again, the ego sees the flaws in others and wants the fantasy that I can make them change. And yet we never can. And the only thing we actually have, but it's a big deal, is who am I going to be in this? Because let's say you have a spouse who drinks too much. Well, accepting that they drink and that they drink regularly and problematically is actually a big deal to accept that. Because a lot of people that are partnered with somebody with a chronic substance abuse problem are often telling themselves a story that if they hide the alcohol or if they pressure them or punish them or something, that they'll eventually change. And all of that's wrong. That the behavior doesn't bear that out. And so sometimes to just come to terms with what is actually pressures the change. You know, I was working with a woman who was in a pretty manipulative, abusive relationship, psychologically abusive. And I was naming that for her, and she just was saying, I just don't think, I don't think I'm really, I can't remember what she was saying, but she was kind of making excuses for it. This was quite a while ago. And I just remember saying to her, it just sounds like you're not ready to do something on behalf of your well-being. You're not ready to do that yet. And there was something about me just naming what is that she would kept going along with this, that she kept staying in a relationship that she knew was bad for her. And when she came back the next week, they weren't married, but when she came back the next week, she said, I ended the relationship. I could not live with the fact that I keep staying in a relationship that is undermining me to the degree that this one has. And my point is that it wasn't in trying to convince her. It was more in naming for her what she was doing and just saying, it sounds like you're not ready to do different. And I wasn't even telling her she should. It just sounded like she wasn't. And that for her was enough to sort of see and say, I have to do something different for me. So accepting is actually kind of powerful because then we're living in the truth. And when we're living in the truth, that's usually the birthplace of our agency. Okay, this is what is. Who am I going to be in the face of this? It's usually our self-deception that keeps us doing the same thing over and over while telling ourselves it's going to produce something different.
You have a great example of this paradox in your book. There was a couple, I don't remember what names you used for them in the book.
Yeah.
But there was
It's like
this couple.
Katie. Yeah.
I'm sure you can think of right who I'm going to say. I'll just do a quick summary of
Yeah.
their story. There was a couple where it was the man's second marriage. His wife was his first wife died. They got married at first, very attracted to each other, but essentially the labor of being a caretaker in many ways leached the joy and passion for her, and she was no longer interested in sex at all.
Yeah.
And you got to this crossroads with them where the man had to accept that his wife was not interested
in an intimate relationship.
in an intimate relationship.
That's
and
right.
he accepted that,
Yep.
but it also changed his behavior in terms of he
Yes.
made choices. And his choice was he presented that to her like, I am accepting that you are not interested in intimacy, and I've accepted that.
Yep.
And I plan to stay committed to you until the children are old, but I don't think our marriage will be
Yes.
a good marriage, or also we may not stay married
That's
for
right.
the long term. And so I think that paints the perfect picture of
Yes.
there's still acceptance, but it doesn't mean apathy. That gave her an opportunity to actually choose for real.
That's right. That's right. Yes, exactly right.
Too.
So it's the Katie and Eric are their pseudonyms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Eric was not trying to manipulate her.
No.
He was really coming to a self-determined place. I keep imagining if we go to Jennifer enough, eventually Katie will want this and something will click, click for her, kick in. And it just wasn't happening. I think she was ambivalently doing the exercises because more she wanted to prove she was trying than she wanted something more exposed. And
she wanted to check off the boxes
yeah,
of being
she wanted
like a good wife, I think, and
That's
also
right.
being performative.
Yeah,
the
and she wanted
therapist
him
in
to
some ways.
believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she wanted him to see her that way. And he finally just said, "Look, I keep trying to get you to want something that you don't want, at least not enough. And maybe I need to take your no as an answer and let this be. And I'm here for raising the kids, but maybe when they're older, I'll make a different decision. But I'm going to stop trying to get you to want this to be an intimate marriage. And I really did think at the time, because she'd come in saying, I hate sex. If I never had it again, I'd be fine. And I think that was all true. I think that she did feel that way. I think she felt taken from in a way. I think she, not that he was a taker, but I think she just felt like I can't be myself here. And, but that she was stunned, and like, she didn't actually want that. She didn't want the removal of his attention and his focus on her, but it meant it asked something more of her. And so then, in accepting his acceptance, right,
Yeah.
and seeing that he was going to self-define in the face of his difficult situation, it actually opened her up to then self-define more deeply. And, I think she was facing that. She could see herself more clearly. She could see her martyr inclination that she had learned from her own family, and saw that she didn't want this at all. She actually wanted something different. And so when she started to bring herself to the question of their intimate relationship, they were able to create something much more soul satisfying, much more real, much more intimate than when she was in a resistance at the same time that she was trying or going through the exercises.
If you haven't heard, I spent all of 2025 writing a book, and I'm so proud to say that my first draft of the manuscript has officially been submitted. There is so much work to come, and the book is set to release in the fall of 2026. However, we have a new title, and with that, a way for you to get first access to what that new title is, as well as the first peek at the cover, and to get exclusive behind the scenes, virtual online events celebrating its launch, to act as grassroots publicity, and to potentially be an advanced reader as well. To get access to all of that, you simply need to be part of the free book launch committee. You can sign up at aboutprogress.com/book committee. I've been sending out newsletters with updates and some juicy behind the scenes, such as lately the good news I got and the bad news I got, which is now turning into not so bad news, and actually I think it's going to be great news in the long run. And I'd love for you to take part. Again, to get access to the newsletter and everything else I just shared, go to aboutprogress.com/book committee. And this, I think, all brings it back to the dilemma we are in as humans, and more so, especially if we are married, this choice we have to pursue happiness or joy. Because I think happiness seems like there's less friction to just be happy, or to find that kind of happiness in the way that it seems more achievable. And joy is harder to come by, and it does involve so much contradiction. Like we just shared, it involves being challenged and development, self confronting, and all these things that you've shared, courage especially. But that story also is one I loved because of what was on the other side was joy for both of them, individually and within their marriage, and also within intimacy too. The embodiment piece is something you said right away, that joy is embodied. I think we need to connect this back to sex. Because of course that's what your work is, but I'm always struck by how in your work, it's not like, let me give you the Cosmopolitan magazine tactics. Like, here's the top 3 positions or things you need to be doing in order to have joy. It's actually so much more. I think it's always about the relationship. I mean, maybe you could quantify it and be like, I talk about method like 3% of the time.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And 97%, it's about this. It's about this stuff. So how does it connect then to the sexual relationship?
Well, I think that, okay, so
this would take another hour. I acknowledge.
Exactly.
And I'm like putting this in at the end, but like we can't leave this without making that connection.
It's very important. I agree. I mean, I think, first of all, one of the things that's at the core of good sex is about enjoying your partner, taking pleasure in your partner. It's not about serving their needs. It's not even about pleasuring them. It's about delighting in the existence of your partner. That's at the core of good sex. Like, I like you. I'm glad you're here. You are my person. And so I like to be close to you. I want to be close to you. And that's the energy that's at the core of it. And it's just like, because you exist, I take pleasure in you. Right. And I think that's the feeling that we want in intimate love. I think we long to feel accepted as we are, loved as we are, to think that our existence could give another person pleasure. Right. And that takes a certain capacity to see. Like, you can't take pleasure in another person's existence if you're busy resenting them for not being what you want. You can't take pleasure in their existence if you're too busy thinking about what your needs are than to just value another soul. And when you can really value another soul, you can take great pleasure in just their presence in your life, flaws and all. And so to be capable of that and to express that through the body, that I can bring my full self here. Right? Remember, that's how we started out. The body is our mother tongue. It's the first language we spoke. It's the way we knew we were loved and accepted. And so we, eventually our parents start saying we have to put clothes on and we can't, we got to make sure we take our hands out of our pants, and you can't, there's all these rules like you have to conform to. And that matters. It matters for learning how to inhibit yourself. It matters for learning capacities. But I think we continue to long for that feeling of meeting somebody who will delight in us as we are. And that just requires that we grow in our capacity to love, but it's ultimately what we still want. And when we experience that in love, in marriage, to feel, I can be myself here with you. You can accept me. We have peace in each other's arms. It's less about the specific pleasures of sex and more about the ability to feel that you're at home with one another, that you can be yourselves with each other, that you can bring your full self there, sexuality and all, your full body. That's what we want. And we're afraid of it, but our souls really yearn for it.
And I think it brings back that choice element too. It's a choice to accept on both sides, to accept. Gosh, let me remake. There was something about you choose to love with knowledge, like full knowledge.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's a special level of love, I think.
It is. Oh, it 100%
And earned.
is. Yes, it is. It takes a lot of, that I can really know you, not look away, and still say, I love you. You're my person. That's a big deal to create that. But it does take courage, and it's also a gift to be partnered with somebody who's willing to do that with you. It's a gift to give another to be that kind of person. That's what I say to my kids. It's the number one thing in a good marriage is two people that will face themselves honestly and bring their best to each other. That's a big deal.
That's how I want to teach about marriage from now on. That's beautifully
Yeah.
said. Speaking of gifts, your book, That We Might Have Joy, truly is a gift. I've read a lot of books and I've talked to a lot of people, and you've been here plenty of times. And I have to tell you, this book truly is a masterpiece. And for anyone who is listening to this and kind of thinking of the disqualifiers that they have in their lives, or the resistance or the fear, read the book. Because I think that's where you're going to be able to get more guidance and also more introspection, like a guided introspection. You have great questions with each chapter to work through those things. I did want to know what surprised you personally about this whole book writing, book release process. I'm sure there are countless things, but what surprised you?
I think how long it took.
Yeah.
But besides that, it took a while, but I think it was I'm glad I took the time that I did for it, because it was a question I really cared about. Like, what is the relationship between sexuality and spirituality, or between sex and the soul? And so it was for me very much about really trying to articulate and figure it out through the work I do with couples and through what I've seen in my own life and so on. And like, how are these two things connected to each other? I think maybe the piece that surprised me the most would be found in chapter 9. where I wrote a lot about the body as an instrument of perception. I think really thinking about the body is really fundamental to our spirituality. And I think because many who've grown up in a Christian tradition can think of the body as an impediment to spirituality, right? That the body and its impulses and its feelings and its sexuality is actually getting in the way of the more lofty side of us. And of course, that can be true. Like if we live indulgently, that will work against our spiritual peace. But the body is actually the way we know the deepest wisdom. It's through our senses. It's through what we can't actually express with words, but that we can feel soul to soul. And I think, on some level I knew this, but I think really thinking about it and starting to write about it and to think about my experiences that have been the most powerful for me are so much in the mapping that happens through the body, through sensation, through the kind of wisdom and understanding that the body allows us to access. And so it made me better appreciate the power of intimate love. Traumatic sex can be deeply damaging because of how powerful the communication of the body is, but also loving connection, loving sexuality can be deeply transformative in the positive sense, that it can really anchor us into a deeper um, a deeper grounding in the marriage. Like it's an inspiration for the marriage. I reference it as the sacrament of a marriage. I'm not the first one to say that, that's for sure. But like that it's a place we can go as a couple to kind of find one another again, to feel reassured, to find a kind of liminality together, like a sense of this deeper connection through the body, to then go and do the day-to-day work. But it's a way of kind of finding the transcendent, the spiritual. And I don't mean the mind-blowing sex transcendent. I mean just that sense of being cared about and known. And I think that our souls long for it. And so our efforts to try and create more ability to be at peace with one another, at peace in each other's arms, is well worth our trouble, because we forge a place of deeper peace where we can be together.
I loved that chapter too, and I'm gonna have to reread that. I think that's like the next challenge in many ways. I think for us is to get to that place. And that couple did too in the story. I think that's what they
Yeah.
got to. It wasn't even
Yeah.
about pleasure. It was about acceptance and delight and
Yeah.
presence,
Yeah.
and that's what
Yes.
made them transcendent. We will make sure we link to that We Might Have Joy for them. Where else should they go if they want to connect with you, learn more from
Sure.
you?
My website is probably the best place. My last name, Finlayson-Fife.com. And there's free resources there. There's 5-6 online courses. There's a podcast where I work with couples around the psychological and sexual intimacy in a marriage. Yeah. And we have a new course that's coming out, I think next week, called Sex Worth Wanting. It's a good
Yeah.
companion to the book, and where I'm really helping couples to understand what's the essence of desirable sex for men and women, right? What is the quality of it? What's happening between the couple, and how do you create that?
Amazing. Okay, well, that will have been out then by the time this airs. So
Yeah,
we'll make sure
great.
they go to the site for that. Jennifer, we always end with the worst question, but a necessary question. And it's just so people can take action on what they learned. So, what is one small way they can do that? Like one doable, practical way they can take action?
This is what I would ask myself is, what do I already know that I need to do better in this relationship? Right? So if you're married, what is it that I already know is a place I indulge, that I bring my lesser self, and it's a part of me that my spouse doesn't like. Okay, but I also know I don't respect it either, if I'm completely honest, even if I've found 25 ways to justify it, that I don't respect it. And then go do differently. right? Doing it differently is what changes. And it can be hard. I mean, like I teach this stuff and there's just moments where I'm like, I don't want to do better. Yeah.
I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah. But it's crazy how much we resist it, because when I do push myself, you live a better life on the other side. You have a spouse that's more open, a spouse that's more grateful, a spouse that's more willing to take responsibility, or because you've actually brought better to the moment. And so it doesn't always produce a change. I don't mean that, but I just think at a minimum, you feel a deeper peace with yourself, and that's worth a lot.
Well, every part of this has been so refining and also hope-giving, I would say, which we need a whole lot right now.
Yeah.
I think we all need a lot more hope. And to have that within our most important relationship is a great place to start. So Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, thank you again for being here, and we hope to see you again soon. And best of wishes on your book and how it's being received.
Thank you so much, Monica.
I hate the endings.
I hope this episode gave you the hug and kick in the pants you need to grow. I'll now share the progress pointers. These are the notes I took so you don't have to. And those in my newsletter will get them in an expanded version and a graphic form in my weekly newsletter. You can sign up at aboutprogress.com/newsletter. And if you're hearing this well after when we aired it, just email me after you sign up for the newsletter and I'll email you back with the graphic. Number 1, joy is not happiness. It's a courageous, embodied openness to love and goodness even amidst difficulty. Number 2, Eros love isn't about sex, it's about self-expansion, desire, and reaching beyond your ego. Number 3, marriage creates joy not by eliminating differences, but by choosing love across them. Number 4, acceptance is not apathy. It's the starting point of agency. And number 5, the most powerful change begins with one honest answer. What do I already know I need to do differently? And that's your Do Something challenge this week, is to ask that question. What do I already know I need to do differently? And take one step to do that thing. Remember, the expanded version of those progress pointers are available in graphic form by signing up for the newsletter at aboutprogress.com/newsletter. I also wanted to give you a quick recommendation. I recorded a fabulous episode with Dr. Tanmeet Sethi years ago on joy, and it's one of the most impactful episodes I personally come back to over and over again. She wrote a fantastic book called Joy is My Justice, so I will link to that episode in the show notes. I think it would be a great companion episode to what you heard today. And as always, I want to thank Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. Jennifer's always so generous with our community and shows up here every single time I ask, and that does not go without great appreciation on my part. This podcast is listener supported. Members of the Supporters Club make my work with About Progress free and available to all, and they also get access to 3 levels of exclusive benefits, from more time to more content with me, including my private premium ad-free podcast, More Personal, where I lean into the personal side of personal development. It is always so fun to release that weekly episode, and if you like About Progress and you wish you had more of it in your earbuds every single week, sign up as a bestie or ride or die level of the Supporters Club. You can always support the show for free. This year, the best way you can do that is by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We are celebrating 10 years this fall, and I always host a Favorite Things giveaway around that time. And when you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, you automatically get submitted to that giveaway. So do that now on Apple Podcasts. And second most important way to support the show is by sharing it with a friend. So pass this episode on to someone who you know needs to hear it. Thank you so much for listening. Now go and do something with what you learned today.
You know, like the AA adage, I never get this right, but please help me to accept the things I cannot change.
Yeah. And the courage to know the difference.
Yeah. What is it? The something, the courage to do the
Both
things
of us
I
have
can't.
not been at
And the
AA
wisdom,
meetings.
you know, and the wisdom to know the
I
difference.
think it's the wisdom. Do you want to say it again?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, please help me to have the
Should I
courage
Google
to
it?
accept the things I cannot change.
I think that's it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway. And the something to I really need to reread it. Okay, but Okay.
I'll take it all out. It's okay.
Okay, I'll just say it again. Okay, so